A stunning Egyptian queen, draped in gold, who seduced powerful Roman men like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. That's the story Hollywood loves to tell. But the real Cleopatra was so much more than a pretty face. In fact, her greatest asset wasn't her beauty, but her brilliant mind. Let's uncover the true story of the last pharaoh of Egypt. First, let's get one thing straight. Cleopatra wasn't Egyptian. She was Greek. She belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a line of rulers descended from Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals. He took control of Egypt centuries before Cleopatra was born. What made her unique among her family was that she was the first Ptolemaic ruler to actually learn the Egyptian language. This showed incredible respect for her people and helped her win their loyalty. She didn't just stop there. She was a linguistic genius who reportedly spoke at least 9 languages. Imagine being able to negotiate with diplomats from across the known world in their own tongue. That's a power move. Cleopatra came to the throne at just 18 years old, ruling alongside her younger brother. But this wasn't a happy family partnership. The court was filled with intrigue and betrayal, and she was quickly forced into exile. This is where her political genius truly shines. She didn't just give up. She needed an ally, and the most powerful man in the world at that time was Julius Caesar, who had just arrived in Egypt. You've probably heard the famous story of her smuggling herself into his palace rolled up in a carpet. Whether it's true or just a fantastic legend, it perfectly captures her bold and daring character. She wasn't just trying to charm him. She was making a calculated political move. She presented herself as a rightful ruler who needed his help to reclaim her throne. Caesar, impressed by her intelligence and audacity, backed her. With Rome's support, she regained her power and became the sole ruler of Egypt. After Caesar's assassination, Rome was thrown into chaos. Cleopatra once again had to navigate a dangerous political landscape. This time, she allied herself with Mark Antony, one of Caesar's successors. Their relationship was a mix of genuine affection and strategic partnership. Together they ruled the Eastern Roman territories from the magnificent city of Alexandria. They envisioned a grand new empire, with their children as its heirs. For a while they were one of the most powerful couples in the world, controlling vast wealth and resources. But their ambition put them on a collision course with Antony's rival in Rome, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son. Octavian launched a massive propaganda campaign against Cleopatra, painting her as a foreign temptress who was corrupting a noble Roman. He declared war, not on Antony, but directly on her. The final showdown came at the naval Battle of Actium. Cleopatra and Antony's forces were defeated. Facing capture by Octavian, who planned to parade her through Rome as a war prize, Cleopatra made her final, defiant choice. According to legend, she died by letting a venomous snake, an asp, bite her. It was a death fit for a pharaoh, a symbol of divine royalty in ancient Egypt. She controlled her own destiny to the very end. So, the next time you think of Cleopatra, remember she was more than just a legendary beauty. She was a brilliant scholar, a cunning politician, and a formidable leader who fought to protect her kingdom in a world dominated by men and the rising power of Rome. She was the last pharaoh, and her legacy is a testament to her incredible intellect and unwavering spirit. Thanks for watching. If you want to uncover more true stories behind famous historical figures, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. When you hear the name Cleopatra, what comes to mind? A glamorous queen, maybe Elizabeth Taylor in that epic movie, or a tragic lover caught between the great men of Rome? While she was all of those things, she was so much more. Cleopatra wasn't just a queen. She was a CEO, a brilliant political strategist, and a military commander who held one of the world's greatest empires in the palm of her hand. How did she do it? Let's unravel the story of the real Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt. First, forget the idea that she was just some seductress who got by on her looks. Ancient sources actually say she wasn't a conventional beauty. What she had in abundance was charisma, charm, and a razor-sharp intellect. The Roman historian Plutarch wrote that her true power was in her conversation. Imagine talking to someone so captivating, so witty, that you just couldn't say no. That was Cleopatra. She could speak multiple languages fluently, including Egyptian, which was rare for her Greek-descended Ptolemaic dynasty. This allowed her to connect directly with her people, bypassing translators and earning their loyalty. She wasn't a foreign ruler, she was their ruler. Now, let's talk business. At its height, Egypt was the breadbasket of the ancient world. It was incredibly wealthy, controlling vast resources of grain, gold, and papyrus. Cleopatra wasn't just sitting on this wealth, she was actively managing it. She was an economic powerhouse. She implemented tax reforms, stabilized the currency, and controlled trade routes that stretched across the Mediterranean and down the Red Sea. She understood that economic power was real power. By keeping Egypt's economy strong, she could fund her armies, build magnificent temples, and, most importantly, maintain her independence from the ever-expanding Roman Republic. When Rome was starving, it was Cleopatra's grain that fed them. That gave her immense leverage. But a brilliant mind and a full treasury aren't enough when you're surrounded by enemies, including your own family. The Ptolemaic court was a snake pit of plots and betrayals. Cleopatra had to outmaneuver her own siblings to secure her throne. This is where her famous alliances with Rome's most powerful men come into play. Her relationship with Julius Caesar wasn't just a romance, it was a strategic masterstroke. Caesar was the most powerful man in Rome, and by aligning with him, she secured his military backing. He defeated her brother's forces and placed her firmly on the throne. Their son Caesarion was meant to one day unite the empires of Egypt and Rome. It was an audacious plan for a global dynasty. After Caesar's assassination, Rome was plunged into civil war. Did Cleopatra retreat? No. She saw an opportunity. She backed Mark Antony, one of Caesar's successors. Again, this wasn't just about love. Antony controlled the eastern half of the Roman Empire, the part that bordered Egypt. Together, they formed a new power bloc, a formidable force that challenged Antony's rival, Octavian, for control of the entire Roman world. They ruled from Alexandria, a city that rivaled Rome in splendor and culture. For a time, it looked like they might actually succeed. They dreamed of a new Hellenistic empire with Alexandria as its capital, a fusion of Greek, Egyptian, and Roman power. Ultimately, her gamble didn't pay off. Antony and Cleopatra were defeated by Octavian at the Battle of Actium, but even in defeat, she controlled her own narrative. Faced with the humiliation of being paraded through the streets of Rome as a captive, she chose her own end, a death worthy of a pharaoh. Her story has fascinated us for over 2,000 years because it's a tale of incredible ambition, intelligence, and power. She wasn't a pawn in a man's world. She was a player, a queen who ruled on her own terms and almost changed the course of history forever. The next time you think of Cleopatra, remember the brilliant strategist, the savvy economist, and the true ruler she was. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into ancient history fascinating, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of incredible figures from the past. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back. Today we're re-diving into one of history's most epic and dramatic sagas, the story of Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, and her fateful entanglements with the most powerful men in Rome. Forget what you think you know from movies. The real story is far more complex, a high-stakes game of power, ambition, and survival that reshaped the ancient world. This isn't just a love story. It says the story of a brilliant queen fighting to save her kingdom from the unstoppable expansion of the Roman Republic. So, grab your popcorn because we're heading back to ancient Egypt and Rome. Let's set the stage. By the mid-1st century BC, Rome was a sprawling, chaotic republic on the brink of becoming an empire. Its generals were like rock stars, commanding massive armies and unimaginable wealth. Meanwhile, Egypt, under the Ptolemaic dynasty, was a shadow of its former glory. It was rich, yes, but politically unstable and heavily dependent on Rome's goodwill. Into this precarious situation steps a young, fiercely intelligent woman, Cleopatra VII. She wasn't just beautiful. She was fluent in multiple languages, educated in mathematics and philosophy, and possessed a political mind that could rival any of her contemporaries. She knew her kingdom's survival depended on one thing: successfully navigating the treacherous waters of Roman politics, and she had a plan. Her first major move involved the most powerful man in Rome at the time, Julius Caesar. When a civil war in Egypt forced Cleopatra from her throne, she saw an opportunity. Caesar had arrived in Alexandria, pursuing his rival, Pompey the Great. Legend has it that Cleopatra had herself smuggled past her brother's guards, rolled up in a carpet and presented to Caesar. This wasn't just a dramatic entrance, it was a bold political statement. She bypassed all the intermediaries and went straight to the top. Caesar, a man who appreciated audacity and intellect, was captivated. He backed her claim to the throne, and their political alliance quickly blossomed into a personal one. They had a son together, Caesarion, whom Cleopatra hoped would one day rule a combined Roman-Egyptian empire. It was a breathtakingly ambitious vision. Cleopatra even traveled to Rome, living in one of Caesar's villas. Imagine the stir she caused. This exotic, intelligent queen from the east, with the son of Rome's most powerful man in her arms. She was the talk of the town, but not everyone was a fan. Many Romans, including the staunch traditionalist Cicero, saw her as a dangerous foreign influence. Her presence highlighted Caesar's growing monarchical ambitions, which rattled the foundations of the Republic. Her dream of a shared dynasty came to a brutal end on the Ides of March, 44 BC, when Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators. With her primary protector and ally gone, Cleopatra and her son were in grave danger. She quickly fled Rome and returned to Egypt, her future once again hanging in the balance. The power vacuum left by Caesar's death plunged Rome into another brutal civil war. The main players were Caesar's chosen heir, the young and cunning Octavian, and Caesar's loyal right-hand man, the charismatic general Mark Antony. After they defeated Caesar's assassins, they divided the Roman world between them. Antony took control of the wealthy eastern provinces, which naturally brought him into Cleopatra's orbit. In 41 BC, he summoned her to Tarsus to answer questions about her loyalty. But Cleopatra, ever the master of spectacle, turned the tables. She arrived not as a subordinate, but as a goddess. She sailed up the Kidnes's river in a magnificent golden barge with purple sails, dressed as the goddess Aphrodite, surrounded by attendants. Antony, who saw himself as the embodiment of the god Dionysus, was completely enchanted. Just like with Caesar, this meeting was the start of both a passionate romance and a powerful political alliance. Antony needed Cleopatra's immense wealth to fund his military campaigns, particularly his planned invasion of Parthia. Cleopatra, in turn, needed Antony's military might to protect Egypt and expand her own influence. For the next decade, they ruled the East together from Alexandria. They had 3 children and seemed to be building a new Hellenistic empire. Antony even publicly declared Caesarion as Caesar's true son and heir, a direct challenge to his rival, Octavian. In a grand ceremony known as the Donations of Alexandria, he distributed eastern lands, which were technically Roman territories, to Cleopatra and their children. To the Romans back home, this was an outrage. Back in Rome, Octavian watched all of this with calculated fury. He was a master of propaganda, and he used Antony and Cleopatra's relationship to his full advantage. He painted Antony as a man who had abandoned his Roman virtues, bewitched by a decadent foreign queen. He portrayed Cleopatra as a seductress who aimed to conquer Rome itself and move the capital to Alexandria. He skillfully stoked Roman fears of foreign domination and monarchical rule. He even illegally obtained Antony's will and read it to the Senate, revealing Antony's wish to be buried in Alexandria with Cleopatra. This was the final straw. It was proof, in the eyes of the Romans, that Antony's loyalties no longer lay with Rome. The propaganda war was won. The final confrontation was inevitable. In 31 BC, the naval forces of Octavian and the combined fleet of Antony and Cleopatra met at the Battle of Actium, off the coast of Greece. The battle was a disaster for Antony and Cleopatra, for reasons still debated by historians. Cleopatra's squadron withdrew from the battle early on, and Antony, seeing her leave, abandoned his own flagship and followed her. His massive fleet, now leaderless and demoralized, was systematically destroyed by Octavian's more agile ships. The battle was a decisive victory for Octavian, and it sealed the fate of Antony and Cleopatra. They fled back to Egypt, but they were now fugitives, their armies deserting them, with Octavian's legions in hot pursuit. The final act of this tragedy unfolded in Alexandria a year later. As Octavian's forces closed in on the city, Antony received a false report that Cleopatra had taken her own life. Devastated, he fell on his sword. As he lay dying, he learned that she was still alive, barricaded in her mausoleum. His men carried him to her and he died in her arms. Cleopatra was now alone, a captive of Octavian. She tried to negotiate with him, perhaps hoping to secure the kingdom for her children, but Octavian was unmovable. He intended to parade her through the streets of Rome in his triumphal procession, the ultimate symbol of his victory. Cleopatra, the proud queen who had commanded kings and generals, would not suffer such a humiliation. Refusing to be a pawn in Octavian's victory parade, Cleopatra made her final, defiant choice. According to the famous story, she had an asp, a venomous snake and a symbol of divine royalty in Egypt, smuggled to her in a basket of figs. She died by its bite, a queen to the very end. Her death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the end of the last pharaonic kingdom of Egypt, and the end of the Roman Republic. Egypt became a Roman province, its vast wealth flowing directly into Octavian's treasury. Octavian, now unchallenged, would soon take the name Augustus and become the first Roman emperor, ushering in centuries of imperial rule. The story of Cleopatra, Caesar, and Antony and Octavian is a timeless lesson in power, ambition, and the collision of cultures. It's a reminder that personal relationships can have world-altering consequences. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the ancient world, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history. See you next time. When you think of a powerful queen from ancient times, who comes to mind? For many, it's Cleopatra. Her name alone conjures images of glamour, romance, and immense power. But was she truly the smartest queen in history? Let's dive in and find out. Cleopatra VII Philopator was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom of Egypt. She wasn't just a pretty face on a coin. She was a brilliant political strategist and a highly educated woman. In a world dominated by men, she held her own and then some. For instance, she was the first in her dynasty, after 300 years of Greek rule, to learn the Egyptian language. This was a masterstroke. It endeared her to her people and showed she wasn't just a foreign ruler, but their queen. She also spoke at least 8 other languages, including Greek, Parthian, and Latin. This linguistic skill was a massive advantage in diplomacy, allowing her to negotiate directly with foreign leaders without needing a translator. Imagine the power in that. But her intelligence went far beyond languages. She was a savvy economist who managed Egypt's wealth effectively, even during times of famine and political turmoil. She stabilized the economy and kept her kingdom prosperous when others around her were collapsing. Her political alliances are of course legendary. She famously allied herself with two of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony. These weren't just romantic flings. They were calculated political moves to protect Egypt from being swallowed by the ever-expanding Roman Republic. With Caesar, she secured her throne and even had a son, Caesarion, solidifying her connection to Rome. After Caesar's assassination, she aligned with Mark Antony, creating a powerful Eastern bloc to challenge his rival, Octavian. This was high-stakes political chess, and she was playing to win. However, calling her the smartest queen ever is a bold claim. History is filled with brilliant female rulers. What about Queen Elizabeth I of England? The Virgin Queen who ushered in a golden age, defeated the Spanish Armada, and navigated treacherous religious and political waters for over 40 years. Or Empress Wu Zetian of China, the only woman to ever rule China in her own right, who reformed the government, expanded the empire, and was a patron of arts and literature. Then there's Catherine the Great of Russia, who expanded her empire, championed the Enlightenment, and reformed the legal system. Each of these women showed incredible intelligence, strategic thinking, and resilience in their own unique contexts. So, where does that leave Cleopatra? Her story is one of incredible intellect and ambition, but also one that ultimately ended in tragedy. Her alliance with Antony led to their defeat against Octavian at the Battle of Actium. Facing capture, she chose to end her own life, a final act of defiance to avoid being paraded through Rome as a conquered queen. This final chapter sometimes overshadows her years of clever rule. In the end, was Cleopatra the smartest queen? Maybe not definitively, but she's certainly a top contender. Her combination of linguistic talent, political cunning, economic skill, and sheer charisma makes her one of the most fascinating and intelligent leaders in history. She wasn't just reacting to events, she was actively shaping them, using her